Then we came to New York Temple, and Prabhupada gave a lecture, and coincidentally enough, he spoke about Indians, and he said especially those who are born in India, Bharat Bhumi te hoile manusya janma ja, janma sarthak kari kara paropakar. They should make their life successful by becoming Krishna conscious and deliver others. And I was there in the crowd and I was hearing, and I felt like, he was telling me that, you're just wasting your life, become serious. And because the environment was so nice, and it was like I was making a very rapid progress. And then the devotees was everywhere. It was 400 devotees in little 439 Henry Street building. So it was really crowded. Next morning, around 11 o'clock, I remember, I was just hanging around Bhagavan Prabhu. And Bhagavan Dasa said, just wait here and see, whenever I get a time, I'll take you. So he took me in to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was sitting alone in his little room there. And he said, Prabhupada, this boy is an engineer in Detroit, and he's now chanting Hare Krishna, and he's read your books and he wanted to meet you. So Prabhupada said, oh yes, what is your name? I said, my name is Janak Joshi, and where are you from? I'm from Surat. Oh, you're from Surat. Surat is a very nice place. I was there and I received a very good reception. People were very, very pious, and they were very interested in chanting. It's a very nice place. What are you doing? I'm an engineer. So you work as engineer, and whenever you have sufficient money, you go and build a temple there. So this was the first instruction that Prabhupada gave me when I met him. Incidentally, Prabhupada's first instruction was fulfilled. Now we don't have, not only we have temple in Surat, but we have temple in Ahmedabad, Baroda, Surat. We have 6 temples in Gujarat right now. In Surat we have a very beautiful temple just opened last year on the bank of the river Tapi. It's also a very nice place, Radha Damodar temple.
I came to the temple in San Francisco, and I was there for a couple of weeks, and the devotees were on their way to London to open the London temple under Prabhupada's order. So I went with them. They were going to be stopping in Montreal to see Srila Prabhupada, get his blessings for their London preaching. And I went with them to be initiated by Prabhupada in Montreal. And then the plan was that I was going to Boston to join the painting group that was painting in Boston and at that time. So I first saw Prabhupada in Montreal, and he was staying at that time on West Prince Arthur Street in a house, and I went there to that house with Malati, Shama Shindar, Jamuna, Gurudas, that group, and with baby Saraswati. So the first time I saw Prabhupada, we went to this house and ran across these stones and came into Prabhupada's room, and I remember my first impression of Prabhupada was he was absolutely effulgent. It was just like the room was completely brilliant effulgence coming from him. And I remember reading that in books, that when you see your true guru, he will be effulgent like that. And he truly was. He was absolutely. It was like a Brahmajyoti. Seeing him, he was just filling the room with light.
The next day, I think Prabhupada came on the 3rd of July. The next day was the 4th of July, 1974. Sri Govinda was president. He said to me, Tranakarta, Srila Prabhupada's writing letters in his room. Don't let anybody in. And we gave Srila Prabhupada the whole Brahmachari ashram that year. Everybody moved out. And it was an old YMCA building, so it was a big quarters back there. Many different rooms. So he said, don't let anybody in this room, stand outside this door, and don't let anybody in. And it was vacant back there because that was Prabhupada's quarters, the whole back. And he said he probably won't come out, so don't worry. He's, I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm standing by Prabhupada's door, and sure enough, a minute later, right after Sri Govinda leaves, Prabhupada comes out, opens the door, walks. I hit the floor, pay my obeisances. And Prabhupada walked into the back bathroom. And when he came back, I was still on my knees. And in one swift motion, Srila Prabhupada walked past me, put his hand on my head, said, Hare Krishna, and walked in his room. But when Srila Prabhupada put his hand on my head, it was like a lightning bolt had hit me. That's how I can describe it. I was completely just surcharged with ecstasy. I mean, I was ecstatic, and I was experiencing emotions. I just, I wanted to start chanting and dancing, and I was like really ecstatic. And a couple minutes later, Sri Govinda walks in to check on me, and as he turned a corner, he looked at me and he stopped, and he's going, Tranakarta, you're glowing. And I just tried to say, Prabhupada, and he said, no, you're glowing. And I said, Prabhupada just touched my head. So Prabhupada touched my head and gave me unlimited mercy, made me ecstatic.
Then I remember I was sitting there, and he was also talking about one devotee who was, I think he had some fall down. And the lead, Kirtananda Maharaj, somebody brought the news that Prabhupada, your servant has had some affair with some lady here. So Prabhupada went like this. He said, in the old days, the Kshatriyas had more than one wife. So he said, so whatever you want to do, you do. So they said, but he should not be your servant, Prabhupada. So he said, okay, so give me another servant, no problem. And I saw the air of detachment and the air of, and the mood of tolerance. Prabhupada was such a tolerant person because he was just thinking that in this age of Kali, especially in this country, whatever people will, whatever percentage of my teachings people will accept, I'll accept it. It was 5%, 10%. And gradually maybe people, as the time goes, they will advance. So whenever there was a problem, he never made a big thing out of a problem. That I saw the first day, in my first meeting in New York, then I saw the way he was so nonchalantly said. He did not condone the activity, but just to cool down the people who are complaining. He just said that, in the old days, Kshatriya had more than one wife. So, but then he removed him as a servant.
They sort of presented me to Prabhupada. They said, this is Wendy. She's only 16 years old, and she's become a devotee, wants to be your disciple. And Prabhupada, it was really quite, his compassion was so great. He saw me and they said I was 16 years old, and he said, but where are your parents? It's so funny to think of the most compassionate Prabhupada, so concerned for my parents suffering that I wasn't with them, and so that was very sweet. Well, but where are your parents?
One walk, we were walking with Prabhupada, all the sannyasis, there must have been 15 sannyasis, maybe 15 devotees on the walk, probably 30 people at least. And Prabhupada was walking by Northwestern University up in Evanston in Illinois, very beautiful place, the college grounds. Anyway, Prabhupada walked under one tree, and it had all these little white flowers on them. Very beautiful, and the branches were hanging down. So Prabhupada was looking at the flower. He stopped, and he's looking at the flowers, and he grabbed one, put it behind his ear, started to walk. He took like 2 or 3 steps, stopped, looked at all of us, and went. So we all started picking flowers and putting them behind. It's like a picture right out of the 60s, you know. So, it was pretty blissful. And then as we walked down, I remember Prabhupada sat in the sand, and he started, we put our chutters down for him, and he started to talk about the material scientists, how they dig up bones. Prabhupada says, they dig up bones, and Prabhupada started digging in the sand with his hands. He was going, they're digging, 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 just like the dog. He said, they dig up these bones, and they think they have conclusive evidence how life began. Of course, he's just blasting the scientists. I remember that was very nice, very ecstatic walk.
I remember another thing, when we were in the evening in Prabhupada's hill. So Prabhupada, Keshava Prabhu, he was the president of San Francisco. He had brought a big bus there, and he wanted to show Prabhupada his bus. So Prabhupada saw the bus, and he said, oh, this is wonderful, very nice. So then he said, so Keshava Prabhu, are you thinking of getting married? So Keshava said, no, Prabhupada, I'm happy as the way I am. And Prabhupada said, yes, that is very nice. Marriage is like you're walking nicely on the street, and then you pick up a big stone and put it on your head. So marriage is like that. It's a big burden. A brahmachari life is very nice, simple life. So why take a big burden like that? That's another thing I remember.
He wanted them to go and actually start a trend. He wanted the story of Mr. Charles Chaplin, that he was at a dance with a lady, and he was sitting on a bench with the lady outside. They went out on the terrace, and then some naughty boys, he was wearing a tailcoat, and some naughty boys came from behind him and with a hammer and nails and nailed his tailcoat to the bench. And so then when he stood up, he saw that his tailcoat was ripped. So he went into the men's room and he ripped it more. And then he came out of the men's room and started dancing with even more flourish than the other men. And so the other dancers were looking at him and thinking, oh, this is the new trend. So they all also went into the men's room and ripped their tailcoats and started dancing just like him. So this was Prabhupada's instruction, how he wanted them to plant the seed of Krishna consciousness in England, to start a trend, and certainly they did that. They were the right people to do that. So then they went on to meet the Beatles and started a Hare Krishna really sensation in England.
One guy came pulling up on his bicycle, and he said, he looked at the sannyasis, and he said to Srila Prabhupada, how come some of these guys are carrying sticks? And Prabhupada said, what did he say? I was standing right next to Prabhupada. He said, what did he say? And I think Tamal said, he wants to know why we're carrying these sticks, Prabhupada. And he said, tell him to chase away dogs. And everybody just started laughing. The guy was kind of bewildered when we invited him to the temple. I'm not sure if he came or not. But.
So on the Janmashtami morning, I was supposed to be initiated. So, I was kind of raw. I didn't know what was coming. And then all of a sudden, Prabhupada's servant jumped from the car. Prabhupada was coming to the initiation ceremony. And his servant jumped out of the car and he saw me and said, hey, Janak Kumar, Prabhupada said that if you want to be initiated, then you have to shave your head. So, all of a sudden, I was still working outside and I had to shave. And I said, what should I do? I was thinking. Now there was no time to go back and forth to Prabhupada because he was already in temple room for the initiation. So devotees in Detroit, devotees from Detroit, they said, come on, your hair is going to come back, just shave up, what's the big deal? And you're getting this wonderful opportunity. A pure devotee is going to initiate you, as agreed. So I said, okay, and then Narothamanand Prabhu shaved me up, last minute. And then when I took a shower and put clothes and went into the temple room, and Prabhupada saw me and said, there was everybody was sitting there. So he nodded like that. And then I sat down and I was initiated. Your name is Joshomatinandana Das. Later on I asked Prabhupada, I thought, if somebody was working outside, he could keep hair. Prabhupada said, the hair will come back, but in a Vaishnava ceremony, if you want to sit down, you should shave your head. He was very kind. I think this was Krishna's dictation to him, especially for me, because I was such a difficult and tough person. And without that special dose of mercy, I would not have been what I am today. I was so embarrassed to go back to Detroit. I just left that life and went to Chicago and started a new life as a brahmachari in the ashram. And that would have never happened. I would have never actually made that progress. So that was also one thing that now I look back, I think it's Krishna's dictation to him. That he had a way to, had different medicine for every person. He was an expert doctor. And I can never thank him enough for the way he transformed my life.
At my initiation, I believe it was the first time Prabhupada told the story of Rukmini. And maybe because I was such a little girl, maybe something reminded him of Rukmini. And so he told the story of Rukmini for the first time, and he said, "So your name is Rukmini?" He said, "You are a beautiful girl. Krishna can accept any number of beautiful girls. So your name is Rukmini?" And then he said, let's see, "Your name is Rukmini. You're a beautiful girl. Krishna can accept any number of beautiful girls." And then he said, "You are a beautiful girl, so now become beautiful within also." This is a very, very beautiful instruction, very powerful instruction.
I asked him about Jesus Christ. I said, "Prabhupada, you say Jesus Christ is the pure devotee, but he never mentioned the name of Krishna, or he never chanted Hare Krishna. So how can we say pure devotee?" So Prabhupada said, because he had no material desires. He was free from material desires, therefore he is a pure devotee. So this is one thing he taught us. Ever since then my esteem for Jesus just went high, and I look upon him as any other acharya. In fact, Jesus, he was a very bold acharya, and because he was a great preacher, Prabhupada had a natural appreciation for him. No other Indian swamis or yogis or teachers, they could have that kind of appreciation of Jesus as Prabhupada had, because Prabhupada himself was doing the same thing as Jesus was doing.
And another time, on a morning walk in Chicago, another guy was walking by and he saw Prabhupada, and he was probably just very awed by looking at Prabhupada, just an ordinary person. And he said, "What do you think about the coming of Christ?" And Prabhupada said, "Your Messiah has already come." And we all, "Jai Prabhupada."
So I went to LA, and here I also got married here after 3-4 months of being here to a devotee girl. She was also a Prabhupada disciple, and we've been married 30 years now. And I wrote to Prabhupada about that I was going to get married. And Prabhupada said, that is very nice. I heard that you want to get married. Husband and wife, double strength. He said. He encouraged like that and blessed like that. Then when Prabhupada was here in December, we had a fire sacrifice Jayatirtha Prabhu had done. And Prabhupada gave a ring from his finger to my wife. And because we were going to India, he gave us a lot of blessings and encouragement.
He was so loving that he saw me and he saw that I was too thin, and like a grandfather, he was very concerned. And so he said that we should be separated. It was really quite amazing. And so I stayed in New York, and Bhardraj was at that time painting in Boston. And so I asked, Brahmananda was the temple president in New York, and I asked him if I could go to Los Angeles to learn pujari work. So I went to Los Angeles for some time. And then I was there it was an extended time. It was maybe about 6 months or something like that. And I was very happy doing pujari work and learning from Shilavati, and very, very nice time. So then Prabhupada was away for a long time in London and Germany at that time. And then he was coming back after a very extended time. And he was coming into Los Angeles. Well, what happened was he came into perhaps New York and then Boston after being away for a very long time, maybe a year. And he saw Bhardraj and he said, "Where is your wife?" And Bhardraj, "Well, you sent her away, Prabhupada. She's in Los Angeles." And he said, "Should I send for her?" And Prabhupada said, "Yes. Husband without the wife is only one half. Wife without the husband is only one half." So I had I had the order to go back to Boston.
When Prabhupada came back to Chicago in 1976, I remember that. Prabhupada he was so kind and merciful that he could take away your anxiety just by his glance, So in Chicago, I had been learning to play the mridanga. Prabhupada came in 74, the next time was 76. So I was practicing mridanga for tapes, kirtans, just playing. So I got pretty good. So the next time Srila Prabhupada came, I wanted to play in the kirtan, and, for his pleasure. And when I went to back where the big devotees were leading the kirtan, I grabbed my mridanga. They went like, no, you can't play. So I was like really hurt, I won't mention any names. But I was kind of hurt, so I kind of made my way back up to the Vyasa-san because I was the Kshatriya of the temple and I was supposed to be close to Prabhupada, And so when I got close to Prabhupada, and I got up to the Vyasa and I kind of looked, he was looking at me before I even looked up at him. And he just smiled so big, he knew. He just took away all my bad, everything gone. Just gave me his mercy,
I also remember one time Prabhupada was sitting in his garden and he started speaking about how he was almost frustrated in coming to America because he was trying for P forms from the Indian government to come to America. He had gone from one department to another department, and they were not giving him. He had convinced Sumati Morarji to give him a berth on her steamer, but then Indian government had to sanction his P form. So he said, I was frustrated, I was getting out of the office, and then one Bengali gentleman, he saw me and he said, he spoke to me in Bengali, how are you, Baba, what do you want, is there anything you have come here for, Swamiji? So he said, what is your name? My name is Banerjee. Oh. So I started speaking to him Bengali, and that man, Banerjee, he went around from this table to that table and got his P form sanction. And he says, just Krishna's mercy. So how much I tried and it didn't happen, and this man, immediately last minute, he did it. So he helped me. And then I came to America, and I used to go to, sometimes I would go back to the pier on which I landed and asked, when is the next steamer going to back to India? Because I was trying very hard and I was struggling very hard. So one man was there, Indian man, he said, Swamiji, you have asked so many times, but you are not going to India because you have come with a mission. So Prabhupada said, actually I also did not want to go back without getting some success. But I would go and ask just, when is the next steamer going to India? So finally, his mission took off and so that portion he was narrating. And I think Sassurma was also there at the time, sitting in the garden, and it has been recorded. But I remember that very intimate discussion once in his garden.
There was one evening where he was looking around the room, and he said, he was looking at each and every devotee, and he said, I want each and every one of you to open a temple. And he was looking into the face of each devotee. And so my impetuous personality, I said, Swamiji, at that time he was called Swamiji, I said, Swamiji, even the girls? He was laughing. He was always very grandfatherly. And he said, yes, there is no difference. When you are preaching, there is no difference. And he began to speak about Janava Mata, that in the absence of Lord Nityananda, she was leading the whole Sankirtan movement. So he said, yes, there is no difference. It's very, very nice instruction.
I remember the exact date I landed. September 13th, 1976 was the first time I ever went to India as a brahmachari. And I arrived in Delhi, and the devotee said, Prabhupada's in Vrindavan. So I just said, really? I didn't know even Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. So I went straight to Vrindavan. And I think I led a Sandhya Arti, the evening Arti that night. So the next morning I was standing out chanting japa after Mangal Arti, and Hansaduta Maharaj at the time came up to me and he said, Tranakarta, Srila Prabhupada wants to see you in his room. And I was like, I thought he was joking, so I said, joke. He goes, no, Prabhupada wants to see you now, so let's go. okay. So I go in Srila Prabhupada's room, I pay my obeisances, and I'm very nervous, And I get up on my knees, and Prabhupada just standing by the door. He was just standing there, and he looked at me, and he said, you are playing mridanga very nicely. He said, where have you learned these things? And I said, from tape Srila Prabhupada and playing a kirtan. I said, but it's all your mercy. And he said, Jai. And then he said and he said something that really was, to me, really touched me. He said, I remember you from America. And I was like, Jai Prabhupada. Then he pointed down to his harmonium. He said, so you can play? And I said, yes, Prabhupada. And he sat behind his harmonium. He started singing to Krishna. And actually, Hari Kesh was recording some of it. He was in the room. And I just started playing for Prabhupada. It was amazing. And it was very, very transcendental atmosphere, to say the least. I mean, the drum was just playing itself. I was really just awed watching Prabhupada.
Then in his room, I remember once Giriraj Maharaj's parents coming there, Giriraj Das Brahmachari. Giriraj had just come from India after being in India for 3-4 years. He was a little sick, so he had come to Chicago, and then he came to Los Angeles. And Giriraj's parents came to see Prabhupada in Los Angeles. And his father was a very respectable man. He was a judge in the court there. And it appears that his father was making some gesture to Prabhupada that if there is anything I can do for you, I would be happy to do it, giving donation, huge donation, whatever. Would you please let my son come back to his family? So, because he was the only son of his parents. So Giriraj was sitting there and Prabhupada said, so Giriraj, what do you think? So Giriraj said, no, Srila Prabhupada, there is no There is no power in this world that can now separate me from your lotus feet. So Prabhupada smiled and he told his father, actually I am not keeping your son, but he likes this Krishna consciousness, so he is staying. I have no objection if he comes to you and continues this activity at home also. But I cannot force him to leave because he has come to me. So, but I can assure you that he will be very happy and peaceful here, and he will make you proud, father. And then his father was a kind of a, he was a jolly man. So there were so many exchanges. But I remember that both mother and father left very happily from Prabhupada with a very positive impression of Srila Prabhupada. So he knew exactly how to conduct himself, especially with the parents of the devotees. He sympathized with them.
1974, Srila Prabhupada was in his room, and Pundarik Prabhu, who was a Chicago devotee, his father was vice president of Playboy magazine. His mother was one of the big writers for the Chicago Tribune. They're big people. And they came to see Srila Prabhupada. The mother was very respectful to devotees. She she wrote many favorable columns in our favor in the Chicago Tribune. Father wasn't so convinced. So Prabhupada was talking and started talking about meat eating and all this, and the guy started to have a conversation with Prabhupada. He started to debate Prabhupada a little bit, and they started to get a little bit, aggressive about it. So as Prabhupada was preaching to him very nicely, and as this guy was getting aggressive, then Prabhupada just finally stopped because the guy was so puffed up. He said, "Then why don't you eat your own son?" And here's Pundarik sitting right now. Whoa, boom, complete silence, man. That was it. Complete silence. He just fried that guy right on the spot.
When I went back to India in 1974, my parents also went to see him. And my mother was saying, our only son, we put all our money, everything to send him to America. And, he has now left everything and joined. So Prabhupada said that, well, he has joined here and you can also come and join. I will give you a room. I will give you a nice place to stay. And your son has now become a devotee of the Lord, so you should be proud. There are so many people who go to America and make money, but your son is a very rare person. And he talked to them so nicely. So I remember my mother afterwards saying, your Guru Maharaj is a very kind-hearted person. So any bitterness or any resentment that anybody ever had, when they sat in front of Prabhupada, it melted away like anything.
So after being trained in the Pujari work in Los Angeles, they had a very high standard of deity worship. It was very beautiful, and it really didn't exist anywhere else in the society. And so coming to Boston, where they didn't have this nice standard, and trying to introduce that from what I'd seen in Los Angeles was very difficult. So I had this dream that all of the devotees were in the temple were lying on the floor, and they were all saying, because this is sort of what I was up against there, they were lying on the floor and they were saying, in New York we do it like this, well in Boston we do it like this, well in Montreal we do it like this, but everyone was just lying on the floor. And then the curtains closed and the deities were gone. So I was very upset by this dream. I was sort of traumatized by this dream. And I wrote a letter to Prabhupada saying, I think we've been very negligent in our standard of deity worship, and now I had this dream that the deities disappeared, and I know that you said that without bhava, deity worship is just like idol worship. So it was sort of a letter full of lamentation on this point. And so how our deity worship must be just so unacceptable. So he wrote a very beautiful letter back saying that it was really a very, very pragmatic letter. He was just listing many, many, many items of cleanliness. keeping the altar clean, bathing, keeping your fingernails short, many, many items of cleanliness. He said, all of these things, follow all of these things, and then the bhava will come. And he said that it is a blessing to you, that it is a great blessing to you that Krishna has warned you. So never be negligent, always be careful. So that was very, very nice. That's kind of the background of that letter.
At one time, same thing, we were circumambulating Krishna Balaram with Srila Prabhupada. We just came around the front doors and we're coming around the side, and Prabhupada stopped. And he looked right in my eyes. He was looking right in my eyes. And he said, simply by circumambulating Krishna and Balaram in this way, no more, and his eyes got really big. And he said, no more traversing up and down in the material universe. And he kept walking. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Another thing at another time I asked Prabhupada, how did Lord Ramchandra disappear? So Prabhupada said that the Vaishnavas do not discuss the disappearance pastimes of the Lord. But he entered in Saryu river and along with the whole Ayodhya. Now, finally I read in Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana, the Lord Ramchandra entered in the river Saryu, and along with him the whole Ayodhya entered, and they went to Vaikuntha together. So they gave me another very important principle, that the pastimes, the disappearance pastimes of the Lord is not very much discussed by the devotees.
One thing I always remember about Srila Prabhupada was how much he cared and how much he loved the devotees, you know. I can remember every morning that he would come out of his room and he would come right up to me and he would say, so how are you this morning? Like a concerned father. And he meant it, you know. There wasn't anything that got past Srila Prabhupada. Like he would come out. I remember one day we were walking around, we would circumambulate Krishna and Balaram, you know, on the outside of the temple there, on the temple grounds, you know what I mean? In the old days, there was that iron gate in the front, and it had a chain around it with a padlock. And we were walking, chanting japa with Prabhupada. And you couldn't see that the lock was unlocked. The Prabhupada just looked at one of us and said, why is the lock unlocked? And we all kind of looked at each other like, you can't tell the lock's unlocked, you know. So one devotee ran up, and sure enough, it wasn't shut. But you could not tell from the naked eye. There was really nothing that got by him. Or he'd come out another morning and say, why did Chowkidar not ring the bell at 2 o'clock in the morning? Right? He knew. Next day, why did Chowkidar not ring the bell at 3 o'clock? There was nothing that got by Srila Prabhupada. He knew everything, down to in Krishna's service, down to minute little things that we were oblivious to.
Another time I asked about Rupa Goswami, and I said that Rupa Goswami was born in a Saraswata Brahmin family, very exalted Gauda Saraswat family. And he was such a great scholar in Sanskrit, and he had a very powerful Vedic background. Why does he feel so low that he also did not enter the temple of Jagannath, Rup Sanatan? That's what I asked him. Why would they not enter the temple of Jagannath? Well, they were actually just because they associated with Muslims. So Prabhupada said, well, associating with Muslim means adopting their habits, like meat-eating and other things like that. So maybe they also had associated with them in that way. So they felt like that. Very pragmatic person, maybe. But he said, but everything they did was under the dictation of Krishna. They are eternally liberated souls, Nitya Siddha. So it doesn't matter what they did.
There was a man who was he was a bearded yogi, and he was staying at the New York Temple at that time, and he was staying at the temple for some time, and he was teaching Pradyumna Sanskrit, and he would go on Harinam Sankirtan with us on the street, and he would stand in the front, and no one really thought much of it. But in retrospect, he was really sort of posing as though he were the guru, and he was teaching Pradyumna Sanskrit. And so when Prabhupada came, he should really tell this story, because he was. Have you interviewed him already? He didn't tell the story. Well, anyway, there was a big scene in Prabhupada's room. This yogi brought some woman in with him into Prabhupada's room, and they began screaming and yelling at Prabhupada, and it was a terrible, embarrassing scene. He was very offensive. And then I remember Prabhupada speaking from the Vyasasana about this yogi and looking at Pradyumna, and he was saying, "Is not a snake with a jewel in his hood even more dangerous?" It was his compassion and his grace and his aristocratic demeanor, just sitting on the Vyasasana and saying, "Is not a snake with a jewel in his hood even more dangerous?" Very amazing story.
Also, I asked about another big Bhagavat reciter in India, probably the biggest ever. He's no longer there, but he was there, very big then, and he had a very saintly character. His name was Dongre Maharaj. So when he gave Bhagavat recitation, he would shed tears from his eyes, and even the audience would cry the way he would speak. Mostly he would speak in Gujarati, but he had become famous all over northern India. He also spoke in Hindi. Even till today, people revere him as a great Bhagavatam reciter. So Prabhupada said, "I don't know about him. What does he say?" So I said that, well, he does speak about Krishna's pastimes, but he also says that you can worship whoever is your Ishtadev, whomever you believe in. And you can also chant Om Namah Shivaya or cling Durgaya Namaha, Chamundaya Namaha. There are several mantras that he prescribed. Even though in his own katha, he would generally chant Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. That's the mantra he would describe. He would himself recite. Prabhupada said, if he thinks that the name of Krishna and name of the demigods is the same, then he is not Dongre, he is Dongre. Dong means pretension, make believe. So he says not Dong, it's Dongre. He says that the devotee, Vaishnava, will not say that the holy name of Krishna is equivalent to anything else. So he never judged a person by his looks or by his name or by the style of speech or by the tears he shed, but he judged the person by what he spoke, the philosophy, the Siddhanta. So that was a nice experience hearing.
So I always play. So as I would like to play Mridanga for him when he sang Jai Radhamadhava, especially. I would love to play, and I know that Prabhupada really liked when I was playing because I would follow him very nicely. And I only got 3 or 4 beats I'd throw in, but Prabhupada liked it so much, and it was just so. The mercy I was getting was last forever. It's what keeps me going right now. But one morning, I had the drum on my lap, and Prabhupada was just getting ready to sing Jai Radhamadhava, and Hansadutta Maharaj said, "Let me have the drum, I want to play today." And I said, "Sure, no problem, Maharaj, give me the drum." And Prabhupada chanted one line, Jai Radhamadhava. I won't even try to imitate how Prabhupada chanted. And then after one line, I should do this plain, Prabhupada opens his eye and he goes. I give Tranakarta the drum. It just went like this though. I grabbed the drum. So he just kept showering this unlimited Mridanga mercy on me. And it continued through my whole stay in India. Wherever, if we went to a village or wherever we went to do a program in somebody's house after Prabhupada spoke in their room, he would look at me and go, play Mridanga, you know, start singing. So I got a lot of Mridanga mercy on that.
At that time, there was a temple in the neighborhood of the where the embassies and the diplomats lived, and it was not really a very good location for a temple. Not so many people were coming. It was Anand Niketan, I believe, was the name of the area, and the Prabhupada had a room on the top of this particular house. The temple was a house, and then Prabhupada had the room on the roof. And he was speaking in his room one night, and we came into the room, and one sannyasi was playing the harmonium, and we walked in, and Prabhupada saw Bhardraj, and he said, let him play, he is better. So he had the sannyasi give up the harmonium. He wanted Bhardraj to play. He loved Bhardraj's harmonium. And so Bhardraj began to play the harmonium. And then after the kirtan, Prabhupada was speaking, and I was sort of sitting toward the back, and he was quoting from the Sikshastakam. And there were many sannyasis in the room, and Pradyumna was there, who he always called Panditji. And as Prabhupada would sometimes do, I believe he was testing the devotees, just to, he was starting to quote this verse, but appearing to not remember the verse. He was saying, Nayanam Galada. What is that? Nayanam Galada. And so I was sort of sitting at the back, and there was a room full of people who were much higher in the hierarchy than I was, and none of them appeared to know the verse. And so I just very quietly said, Nayanam Galada Shudaraya. And Prabhupada, his eyes got very big. He said, yes, what is that? What is that verse? And I said the verse, and he was looking around, teasing them. Looking, to make sure that they noted that. So as he did that, my head started to get bigger. Of course, I fell into the trap, false pride. And so then he tried it again, and he started to quote the last verse of the Sikshastak prayers, Asli Siva. What is that verse? And I guess they had memorized other verses. And so I again said the verse, Asli Siva Padaratam Pinastuma. And he said, yes, what is that verse? He made me chant the verse. And then he looked at all of them, and he said, you see, this little girl, she knows. You don't know, she knows. It was very, very much the grandfather, the teasing grandfather. But then, of course, my head swelled, and I was not any better. And so then he had to take care of my false ego. So then he began to talk about the Ugra Karma civilization, and how people are working so hard, such long hours in such hellish factories. And he said, just like they have these, what is it called? Crucible. He said, they have these gigantic crucibles. And I went, And he looked at me and he said, oh, you know what is crucible? But I really didn't. But I said, well, a crucible is like one of those little rooms where those monks meditate. And he just tossed his head disgustedly, just throwing it away. And he said, does anyone know what is crucible? And then Brahmananda was there, and he said, he said, yes, a crucible is one of these vast forms in which they melt this molten steel for making the beams for building the skyscrapers. And Prabhupada said, yes, that is crucible. And he looked at me. So I was properly chastised. That was a nice memory.
He would speak, whoever came, he would give philosophical, instructions. That was his life. Whoever came, after 2 minutes, he would start talking about Krishna. And he used to keep this book, one by Dr. Radhakrishnan, one by Gandhi. And he used to show to very intelligent, prominent people, see what Dr. Radhakrishnan is saying, that this Kurukshetra is not a historical place. Kurukshetra means your body. 5 Pandavas means your 5 senses. And Kauravas means all the evil desires in the mind. And originally this poem of Mahabharata was written by some poet who assumed the fictitious name Vyas, and then somebody else added something, and somebody added something else, and it became a big epic. But it's not written by one man, but by several people. Like that, his Indological ideas which he learned from Westerners, that's what he was propounding. Prabhupada was blasting. He said, today historical place is there, Kurukshetra, and thousands of people are visiting, and he says Kurukshetra is not there. So, how can you learn Bhagavad Gita or hear anything from such a person? Then he also had one book by Mahatma Gandhi, Essays on Gita. In one of the statements, Mahatma Gandhi says that if all these activities that are attributed to Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam, if all those activities are true, if actually such a person existed who performed these pastimes, then I refuse to accept him as God incarnate, even at the cost of being banished from Hinduism. So Prabhupada was very furious at this. He said that he had no understanding of who Krishna is. Krishna's pastimes are not material, they are transcendental. And of course, if God is there, then he must be the supreme enjoyer. Obviously, you have the tendency to enjoy, he must have it. Your tendency to enjoy is perverted reflection of his tendency to enjoy. He is the original enjoyer. And for you, you should banish yourself for desiring to actually enjoy pastimes with other female who are actually all God's wives, God's Prakriti. He is the Purusha and every other Jiva is Prakriti. Therefore your wife is also his wife. So our desire, we don't have any right, but God has all the rights. Like that he would explain to the people who visitors who came. And this way, even Gandhiji said in his autobiography, actually Experiments with Truth, that I always suffered from the lack of spiritual instructions because I never had a spiritual master. He admitted it. But still he made this kind of wild comments. But in his biography he has admitted that I never understood spiritual life. And I suffered because of that.
One time we were in Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan, and Jagadish was there, myself, a few other devotees. But Prabhupada was speaking Hindi to the guests, and we couldn't really understand too much. And Jagadish, I don't think, could understand anything. So we sat there, and it was, of course, ecstasy, just seeing Prabhupada, his exchanges with these people, So after the guests got up to leave, and Prabhupada was graciously walked them out to the door, and they said something to Jagadish, the guests. And they were big guests, like political guests or whatever they were. And they said something to Jagadish, in English. And Jagadish replied, Acha. Like you say, Acha? Like all the devotees say, Acha, right? And Prabhupada said, just see, speak in Hindi. whole room just busted up, man. We were just laughing so hard.
Sometimes he would be very tolerant of his devotees. When whole thing happened about New York activity, Balimardhan and his wife story. So he got some letters from New York and he was reading. And then he said, the whole problem is this sex life. He said, Janme sunadi grihamedi sukhami tucham, thu. Tucham means, thu means spitting. It's useless. He said, all sex life is bad, but especially illicit sex is very bad. So, we are having so many problems because of this illicit sex life. Thu. Janme sunadi grihamedi sukhami tucham. So it's a big problem, but Prabhupada spoke for 5 minutes and then he never spoke about it again. He reduced every problem to philosophical understanding. He always saw from the philosophical point of view. He was never a doer of anything. He depended on Krishna fully for everything. That I saw in every action. He would pursue a certain line, and if it did not, whether it was going to be successful or not, he left it to Krishna.
They were writing to Prabhupada that the new temple is like a palace. And I was very distraught about this because I was thinking, Prabhupada will be so disappointed when he comes. They're telling him it's a palace, but it's really only another storefront that's a little bit nicer. And I was thinking, oh, here Prabhupada's coming in, and I was thinking that he's going to be so disappointed, or maybe he'll be angry, and what's going to happen? And I was very distraught about this. So the first temple was just right off the Bowery on 2nd Avenue, and then the second temple was at 61 2nd Avenue, just a few blocks up, and it was a one-floor walk-up. It had been a tuxedo shop, and there were mirrors on the wall, so it was a little bit more gala storefront. So here Prabhupada's coming, and they're telling him it's a palace. And so Prabhupada did come in. He came in at the airport. Perhaps that's the time when the dancing, the beautiful tape of the devotees dancing with Prabhupada. But so he came in at the airport, he came in to the new temple, and he sat down on his Vyasasan, and he said, I prayed to Krishna to send me one moon, but he has sent me so many moon-like boys and girls. And I was just so amazed at his gratitude and his love, that here I thought he would be disappointed or perhaps angry, and he was so grateful for even the slightest endeavor of service.
Like I was saying before, how concerned he was about the devotees and how much he loved us and cared about us. It was wintertime then, it was like October, November, whatever it was, but we were sitting on, Krishna Balaram on the marble on the floor. And one morning it was especially cold, and Prabhupada looked down at us and he said, "You are cold?" I'm like, "Yes, Prabhupada." So that day he had myself and another devotee, I can't remember his name, Krishna, my god brother. Anyways, Prabhupada had us go to Agra and get all these madras, big, carpets to roll down on the floor for all the devotees so they would stay warm. He was always concerned about our health and like that. Like a loving father, Besides being the savior of the whole world, he was like a loving father to all of us,
Some devotees were wanting to go from Juhu to Bombay by taxi. And I am kind of a miserly man. I said, why should you go by taxi, So I So told Prabhupada that Prabhupada, your devotees want to go from Juhu to Bombay by taxi, it's very expensive. So Prabhupada said, so I was objecting, and it was kind of, some devotees were getting a little agitated. So I told Prabhupada that, devotees are getting agitated because I'm objecting to this thing. So Prabhupada said, you just think like this. They were just like tigers, blood. It's like tigers drink blood, they were eating flesh and blood. Now they are chanting Hare Krishna, they are enjoying spiritual, they are dancing. Is not that a very great achievement? So if they want some money, just give them. If they are taking some extra money, if there is some fault, don't worry about it. Then next day in the class he said this money is very, very hard to come. He said every rupee should be considered as a brick in the temple. Money is like Krishna's blood, and we should not waste money. So instruction. So to me he said, you tolerate. To them he says, don't. There's money. In other words, you can say the same thing, but you can say it in such a nice way that a person does not feel discouraged. This was the key principle in Prabhupada's dealing with every devotee. And that's why he was able to produce so many managers. In spite of all of us making so many mistakes, the movement grew because Prabhupada's kindness and affectionate nature.
Hari Sari Prabhu was Srila Prabhupada's servant at the time. He was very kind to me. He would always give me little things to do for Srila Prabhupada. So he said at the Tranakarta, I just washed Prabhupada's clothes. I'm going on the roof to hang them so they dry. They used to hang the clothes up. He said, if Prabhupada rings his bell, he has some political guests in there, please go in and see what he wants. Okay, Jai. He says he probably won't ring the bell. We just served him prasadam, so I'll be down in a few minutes. Okay. So as soon as Hari Sari leaves, of course, same thing, right? Ding, 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 ding. Bell rings. I go running in. Yes, Srila Prabhupada. He said, more puris for the guests. Yes, Srila Prabhupada. I run out. Boom. Run back to the kitchen. More puris. Srila Prabhupada needs more puris for the guests. Oh, we don't have any more. We're out of flour. We can't make any more. I'm like, what? What? I can't go back in and tell Prabhupada there's no puris. Well, Prabhu, we don't have any more puris. And I'm such a fool. It's like, instead of making them or doing something, I just went back in the room. And up to this point, my relationship with Prabhupada was always just like a loving, there was never any chastisement. And when I said that, Srila Prabhupada, there's no more puris. Oh, he just was furious. He said, what do you mean there are no more puris? There must always be prasadam. He's like yelling at me. And I didn't realize till later on, actually Hari Sari told me just a few years ago in Mayapur, that letter had just gone out. Prabhupada was just really upset about Kumbh Mela. So I got the backlash of that, whack. But it was mercy, I kind of felt bad, but it was mercy. So.
Another instance I remember is when the Nectar of Instruction came out, the book in which it is said that there's the last verses, they say, Vaikuntha janito varamadupuri tatrapi raso savad. Greater than Vaikuntha is Mathura Mandal, and greater than that is Vrindavan, where Rasa dance takes place. And greater than Vrindavan is Govardhan, and in Govardhan Radhakund is the best place. Where is a person who is in knowledge who will not serve the holy place called Radhakund? This is the verse from Nectar of Instruction. So the Prabhupada's secretaries were complaining that now devotees have read this book and they want to come to Vrindavan. They want to give up their service in book distribution and they want to come to Vrindavan and stay in Radhakund because the Nectar of Instruction says like this. So Prabhupada says, just see the rascal. He is not even followed the first verse of Upadeshamrut and he is jumping on the 12th verse of Upanishad. The first verse is Vacho Vegam, Manasaha, Krodha Vegam, Jihva Vegam, Udarapastha Vegam. One who controls the pushes of the senses, he is fit to be guru and make disciples everywhere. Saramapima Pathvim Sasishyat. So he said, let him first follow this first verse of Upadeshamrita. Let him control his senses first. Then he can think of Radha. Just like monkey, he is living in the forest, on the tree, eating only fruits and leaves, but always thinking about where is the she-monkey. So he is jumping from branch to branch. So it's called Markata Vairagya, renunciation of a monkey. So this kind of desire, give my service when go to Vrindavan, is simply a monkey business. And tell them that first let them control their senses. First, let them first perfect the first verse of the Upadeshamrita, then think of the 12th verse of the Upadeshamrita. That was very instructive thing.
I remember this one particular gentleman. He seemed like a very pious man to me, elderly Indian gentleman, looked very pious. But Prabhupada always seemed to be able to see the heart of the person. And so this man was saying to Prabhupada, Swamiji, give us your mercy, give us your mercy. It seemed like a very ardent way to me. And Prabhupada was just very offhanded with him. And he said, I have already given everything. Still you do not take. What is the use? And I was so shocked that the way Prabhupada, sometimes he would seem to give so much mercy to someone who seemed so undeserving, and this man seemed very pious to me. And then Prabhupada gave him the example. He said, just like a man, he has fallen in a well. Someone throws him a rope, but he does not take. It was just, it was very, very harsh, but still like a bittersweet compassion he gave this man.
Some other memorable events were when we went to the morning walk on Juhu Beach, famous morning walks with Dr. Patel, where he would be arguing with Prabhupada and Prabhupada would defeating, smashing his philosophy. So every day, Dr. Patel had a very arrogant personality, but with Prabhupada, Prabhupada was like a snake charmer, He was charmed by Prabhupada. Only with Prabhupada, he would only be respectful to Prabhupada, nobody else, no other devotees. He would criticize every devotee except Prabhupada. And Prabhupada also philosophically would argue, but with respect. And Prabhupada also respected him. That Dr. Patel was proud that Prabhupada is like my elder brother. He was thinking like that. He said, in previous life, I must have been your brother. Prabhupada would just encourage him. So, one day, Prabhupada said something about Ramakrishna, Paramhans. He said that Ramakrishna's philosophy is totally bogus. Yato mat tato pat. And you can eat anything, you can do anything, and that's all the same thing. So this is totally bogus philosophy. It's atheism. And then he was criticizing Daridra Narayan philosophy. Daridra Narayan, Vivekananda had coined this term, Daridra Narayan, that Narayan is not in the temple, but he is in Daridra, means poor man. So better you serve the poor man than going to the temple. So Prabhupada was criticizing this, that if Narayan is in Daridra, then why is not in the rich also? And if Narayan is in the man, then he is also in the chicken. So you are trying to serve the poor man and kill the chicken and eat. So Murgi Narayan, you are eating Murgi Narayan and you are serving Daridra Narayan. So your philosophy is contradictory. Prabhupada said that, why are you calling Daridra Narayan? He is Daridra. You want to serve him, you want to give him something. On Daridra you can bring compassion, but serve Narayan. You can be compassionate to poor men, but service should be rendered to Narayan, to God. So this kind of confusion has made Bengal ruffians. That's what he was saying. So this one man, Gujarati man, Mr. Shah, he became bewildered totally. He just completely flipped out and he started shouting, "You criticize everybody, you this, you do that. You don't respect any other saintly person. You only think that you are right. This is not good. Why you say like this? He was a great man." So devotees were very upset. They were going to physically remove him. Prabhupada said, "No, let him speak." Prabhupada was very calm. Just walked. He just said, "I am not saying anything. I am simply saying what Krishna is saying. Namam duskutino mudha papadyanti naradhama." Those who are miscreants, foolish, whose knowledge is tulanoya by maya, they do not surrender to Krishna. So Krishna is saying they are miscreants. So on behalf of Krishna I have to say this. I have nothing against that person, but I am trying to teach my disciples, how to judge the philosophy. That much he said. Then we walked silently back to the temple. And then Guru Puja started and devotees were offering flowers. So this Mr. Shah, he was also offering flowers every day. So that day he offered flowers to Prabhupada and he put his head on Prabhupada's feet and started crying. He started crying bitterly like a baby, He felt repentant. And Prabhupada put his hand on his head and said, "It's okay." But he said, "From tomorrow on we are not going to discuss anything. We are just going to read Krishna book." So from that day on, devotees would read Krishna book, one of us. And Prabhupada would hear on the whole morning while walking we would read Krishna book. It started like that.
There's another story. I didn't know if I wanted to tell this one, but I will. Because some of my other God brothers have confirmed this, that you could be in a room with a bunch of devotees, and Prabhupada could reveal something to you that the other people in the room cannot see. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but a few of our God brothers have. I've had the experience. One morning in Delhi, it was a wet morning, kind of drizzly or moist, and we went to a park with Srila Prabhupada. We drove. We got out of the park and walking. And that morning Prabhupada was not saying a word. He was just chanting, very heavy, very intense. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So we're walking with Prabhupada down the path and we're just all chanting. So all of a sudden Prabhupada goes off the path onto the grass. And it's kind of wet, so we're like wondering, where's Prabhupada going? And we're walking through this park. All of a sudden he comes up to this little hill, and there's 3 trees. 2 on the side and 1 in the back. So it made a little cave in there. They were only like this high. It's like big bush trees. So we could see Prabhupada's walking right for these trees. So we run ahead and put our chatters in there. Prabhupada walks right in, sits down. Still chanting, not saying a word. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. All of a sudden, to my eyes, Srila Prabhupada started to emanate an effulgence that was incredible. So incredible, it lit up the whole inside of that thing, and I could not make out Prabhupada's features. It was completely molten gold. And I was sitting there just awestruck, watching Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada came back, a minute. It seemed like forever. But when he came back, he looked in the distance, and there were 2 men walking 3 football fields down. It was quite a distance. If it was somebody you knew, you probably wouldn't have recognized him. You wouldn't have known who it was. Prabhupada goes, "Those 2 men, I know them." We're all like, "Okay, Prabhupada." He goes, "Yes, I used to buy paper from them before I came to America for my Back to Godhead magazine." We're like, "Wow, Prabhupada." And he said, go see. He like sent 2 devotees, go run it. They start disappearing, you know. You come back with these 2 guys, sure enough. These are 2 guys, and they paid their obeisances to Prabhupada, and they were so emotional and so ecstatic to see Prabhupada. It was really something to see. That's a story I usually kept for myself because I don't know if people can understand, but it's true. Why did I see that? I have no idea. Causeless mercy. Yeah, definitely. You know, Prabhupada told us many times Krishna would come down and sit next to him and tell him exactly what to say. So maybe I got a little glimpse of Krishna pulling up in his chariot. I don't know. I have no idea. But it was really a beautiful thing.
Another time we were going on a morning walk, and on the way from the temple to the beach, on the right hand side there is a person that's running a music class. So he came and offered obeisance to Prabhupada. So his Prabhupada said, yes, so what is your name? What do you do? Oh, I'm running a music class. Oh, in that building, such and such music class. So he was surprised. You remember this, Swamiji? So he said, yes, one should be observant.
That time he told some stories in his room one night. He was speaking about common sense. And he said, he was talking about real intelligence. If a man is intelligent, he said, if a man is intelligent, he will, when he is lying on his back, he will naturally count the rafters. Very interesting. He was talking about common sense intelligence and the ability to be observant. And so he began to tell different stories. He said that when he was a child, during the rainy season in Calcutta, there would be a dripping pipe outside the window, and he would use the sound of that dripping pipe as a metronome, and he would practice his mridanga beats faster and slower according to the dripping of the pipe. And then he told one story about a train called the Punjab Mail, that a man was applying for a job, and there was a question on this job application, have you ever ridden the Punjab Mail? And the applicant said, yes, many times. And so the next question was, how many cars are there on the Punjab Mail, the train that brings the mail to Punjab? So the idea was, if you're intelligent, you will have noticed how many, if you ride that train, you will have noticed how many cars are on that train. And then he told another similar story. A man was applying for a job, 2 applicants came. And there was the man who was interviewing the applicants and his assistant. So one man came in, he sat down, he had his interview, he had many qualifications for the job. He was dismissed. He did not close the door after him, and he left. And then another man came, took his interview, sat down, took his interview, and he had none of the necessary qualifications for the job. But as he was dismissed, he closed the door properly behind him. And so the assistant to the interviewer said to his assistant, who do you think will get the job? And the man said, of course, the man with all the qualifications. And his director said, no, this man who has none of the qualifications will be given the job. But why? He said, because he closed the door behind him. So he will be able to be trained. We will be able to work with him. The other man, although he has the qualifications, he was not observant to close the door properly. So we won't be able to work with him in our company. So very interesting instructions about common sense and intelligence he was giving in his room in Vrindavan.
In New York was ecstatic. I remember devotees were cleaning. Prabhupada loved the rooftop. He'd sit up on the roof, on 55th Avenue there. So the devotees were cleaning that whole building. They were just cleaning and cleaning, making it spotless. But there's one little shack that was up on the roof, like a storage little thing where you put mops and stuff. And the devotees were just like throwing stuff, thinking Prabhupada's not going to go in there and look. right? Prabhupada, why would he go into a utility thing and look in there, you know? So he was throwing stuff in and put a lock on it. So there's no way Prabhupada's going to. You know, so Prabhupada took a tour of the whole building, you know, how we would usually do. And went upstairs on the roof. So when he came out into the rooftop, the first thing he did, boom, right to that shack. I can see the faces of these devotees. No, you know, it's like, Prabhupada goes, what is in here? Oh, it's just storage, Prabhupada. Open it. I opened the thing, man. It's like all this junk in there, and Prabhupada just like made a face. Just he didn't even say anything. I don't remember. I don't think he even said anything. It was just like, and everybody's like, oh man, it's like, you know, clean this or this is nonsense. He knew everything. That's what I was saying before. He knew every aspect of everything that had to do with devotional service to the Lord. There's no doubt that every little aspect he knew. Things that we were completely oblivious to, he knew.
At the time of inauguration of the Vrindavan temple, Sri Prabhupada put me in charge of the kitchen. Oh, I also helped with the invitations and things like that, printing of invitations. And then he put me in charge of the kitchen, prasadam kitchen, which always took a lot of my time. I missed most of the celebrations, festivities. So he also sent me to invite various saints of Vrindavan to come for the festival. I went to invite Karpatri Maharaj. Karpatri was the biggest impersonalist of India at that time, most respected person, very strict sannyasi. Because even though he was impersonalist, he was giving Bhagavad Saptahas and speaking about Krishna. He was living in Dhanuka ashram right next to ours. So I went to invite him for the inauguration. We had a week-long festival. Every day different saintly persons came. So I went to invite him. He said, well, I cannot come to your function. Why? I said, because your guru is giving Brahman threads to Westerners. This is not possible. This should not be done. So I said, well, why not? If they behave like Brahman, if they are rising early in the morning at 4 o'clock and they chant Hare Krishna 16 rounds every day, they study Bhagavatam, they study Gita, they study all the scriptures, and all day they spend in spreading the message of Sanatana Dharma. Whereas the Brahmins nowadays in India, they are becoming bus conductors and they are becoming factory workers and they are becoming postmen. So how do you think that they are Brahmins and they are not Brahmins? These people are not Brahmins. So I agree like that. I said, Chaturvarnyam Maya system guna karma vibhagasya. According to guna and karma, the 4 divisions are devised. Then when I had gone to that Vallabhacharya, he also said that your guru is making Brahmanas, giving Brahman threads. So Prabhupada said, open Srimad Bhagavatam. So he asked me to bring Bhagavatam, 7th canto. Open chapter number 11. And it's the last verse. Narada Muni is instructing about the duties and roles of Varnashram in that chapter, 7:11. And at the end he says that if you see the symptom of a Brahmana in a Shudra, or a symptom of a Shudra in a Brahmana, then he should be accepted in that category whose symptom he has. If the Brahmana has symptom of Shudra, then he should be accepted as Shudra. If Shudra has symptom of Brahman, he should be accepted as Brahman. Yasya lakshanam proktam tasya varnabhivanjakam yadanyatra drishyata tat teneva vinidishyata. This sloka Prabhupada made me memorize in 1975, 74. So this was like somewhere deep in the scripture, this sloka. So I quoted this sloka to Karpatri Maharaj, and his eyes popped up like this. He said, "Your guru has trained you very well." He was, because Prabhupada told me this sloka, so I quoted this sloka back to him, Karpatri. Yasaya lakshanam proktam tasya varna vivanjakam. So he said, "Your guru has trained you very well." Then he said, "But there is a tiger, actual tiger, and a tiger-like man. A man is considered, he's like a lion. So he's like a lion, but he's not lion. So he's like a Brahman, but not a Brahman." Like that, you can see how the Mayavadis use the word jugglery. So there was the example of word jugglery. So I came and narrated everything to Prabhupada, that this Karpatri was speaking like this. So Prabhupada said, "Did you tell him this verse? Yasaya lakshanam proktam?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Yasaya lakshanam." And he said that your Guru Maharaj has prepared you very well. So I started laughing. He said, "Yes, prepared very well, everything accepted, but still he is so envious he will not come to our function. So unfortunate. This wonderful temple of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is opening." He appreciated, but it was too hard, Mayavadi.
Bhishma was, she loved Prabhupada. In Calcutta, one day, she would come in Prabhupada's room when he was with guests, and she would just start talking. And I remember we were in there one day, and Prabhupada was with some guests talking. She came in the room, talking in Bengali, and Prabhupada said, "Old woman, sit down." And she just and sat right down, didn't say a word. And one day I was sitting out outside of Prabhupada's room in Calcutta, the terrace outside, the balcony and I was sitting there, and she always carried a little, that I could see, she always carried a little bottle of Ganga water under her sari, like under here somewhere. She had a little bottle of Ganga water. And the first time I realized it was she came up to me, and she went under her sari like this and poured some in her hand, and then went like this. Poof! Right in my face. And she goes, "Ganga gel!" It's just ecstatic, laughing, That's how we remember Srila Prabhupada's sister. And I really enjoyed seeing her around. She looked, she looked a lot like Prabhupada. You could tell they were brother and sister. And you could tell Prabhupada really loved her too. Yeah.
The governor was there as a chief guest in the function, Kechana Reddy, governor of Uttar Pradesh. So we had a very nice Vyasasan for Prabhupada. And we wanted Prabhupada to sit on the Vyasasan, inauguration day. Prabhupada said, "No, I will not sit on a Vyasasan. I will sit with the governor in the chair." Because there is a protocol that when a governor is there, no one should sit on a higher seat. So Prabhupada knew this protocol. So even though it was his temple opening, he is the Acharya of the whole world, he himself made arrangement and sat on a chair with the governor.
I got to go on a couple morning walks in New York. I remember one in particular. Prabhupada was we were walking in Central Park, and there was a tree, and a big dead branch from the tree fell. Big branch fell, it was dried up, dead. Prabhupada took his candies. This is our modern society. Dead. Why are they dead? Because they are disconnected from Krishna. I always remember that.
And then I remember Nanda Kumar was serving Prabhupada at that time. And Nanda Kumar came out of Prabhupada's room one day, and he was just bewildered and shaking his head, and he said to me, "Prabhupada said the most amazing thing. He said that I'm too creative to be a good servant. He said I should do business." And at that time I thought, what's creative about business? And I was really very surprised, and he was also surprised, but in retrospect I can see that business really is very creative. And now I find myself doing business, and I can see how right Prabhupada is, and I've often mentioned that to people also. Yeah.
1977, I went to one of his godbrothers' place, Madhu Maharaj's place, and there was another devotee with me. So I said, I am a disciple of Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami. Oh, so Madhu Maharaj said, oh, that is very nice. But I am senior to Swami Maharaj. I am senior to Swami Maharaj. He said that yes, there is Swami Maharaj was a businessman, so he is very expert in organizing. Therefore, his movement has spread everywhere, very well. But that is all external. Bhakti is something else. Bhakti is the spontaneous thing in the heart. So I could see he was criticizing. Then he gave me some orange or something. I left it there and I walked out. I said, this man is... I said that bhakti... I said, preaching is the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and you consider that as an external thing? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, whomever you meet, you talk about Krishna. And he said, Haridas Thakur Nityananda Prabhu, to go door to door. And you think this is external. So then I left and I came and told Prabhupada this thing. And Prabhupada was so furious. For 3 days he spoke about this on a morning walk. 3 days he said, just see the envious person. He thinks that this spreading the mission of Lord Chaitanya all over the world and thousands of people are chanting Hare Krishna, that is because it's from business success. It's an external thing. What has he understood? He's a sannyasi for so many years. What has he understood? For 3 days he blasted.
Another time, Sri Govinda's son, Sudarshan, was in Prabhupada's room. Sri Govinda was president in '74. And he had a crayon or something. There was Prabhupada had a picture of Bhaktisiddhanta there. And he just, the kid, a little kid, he was like 2 or 3, just had his crayon and he went like, and Prabhupada just, don't you do that to my Guru Maharaj. And actually then Sri Govinda's wife, I think, took Sri Darshan out of the room. And then Sri Govinda was feeling a little bad. And then Prabhupada said, when the child is a rascal when he was young, it means he will grow up, he will be a great soul. He told Sri Govinda. Just took away all his anxiety.
Once we were sitting with Puri Maharaj, and he recalls that B.V. Puri, he was a favorable man. He called Prabhupada, and when Prabhupada put the Mayapur cornerstone, many godbrothers did not come, but he came. In fact, he went to invite everybody, and they were not coming, but he came. So, somebody came from Calcutta, some big officer, government officer, and he was saying, Swamiji, I always go to Ramakrishna mission, and I'm following dharma properly. So Prabhupada said, these disciples of mine, these Western disciples, they will not go to Ramakrishna mission even to pass urine there. And then he blasted this man. He said that, what is this Jatam Tatopat? What does he teach? You are going there, but do you know what he is teaching? He is teaching you don't have to go to the temple, you don't have to chant, you just build your body and you just serve the poor. But Bhagavad Gita, there are 700 verses. Is any verse saying like this? So what is the mission? What is the use of this mission? If you do not repeat the words of Krishna, what is the use of this mission? And he blasted the man. Sometimes he would be very bold and very forceful, and sometimes he would cool.
There's a quality that Lord Krishna is described as being bhavagrahi janardanam, that he just accepts the essence of the bhakta's love or devotion that's offered to him. He accepts the essence of the offering. So Prabhupada was so much like that. He really just took the essence of what a person was offering. He could see right through and see right to the essence of what was being presented. If someone was approaching him with arrogance, he could cut right through that. Or there was just a kernel of sincerity, he would take that. And he saw what was hidden and what no one else would see. He was so totally unstereotyped and so transcendent. So each word doesn't describe him completely, because you could say so aristocratic, but yet so childlike, with childlike innocence, and so meek and humble, but yet with the regal air of a king, but yet like a child. So beautiful, so unassuming, and so immanently present at every moment, observant to every detail, and yet so kind to everyone. I remember once in Boston, we had a very small little temple, and there was only one brahmachari. Devananda was the brahmachari. Satsvarupa was there. He was the temple president. And this brahmachari was having some difficulties. And Prabhupada, at that time, this was about maybe 1968 or 69, Prabhupada anyone who was having trouble would go travel with Prabhupada for a while. That would be the medicine, go travel with Prabhupada. He would take the person who was having some trouble. So Devananda had expressed some desire to travel with Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada was asking Satsvarupa if he could have Devananda to go travel with him. But he was the only brahmachari. And so Satsvarupa, he had his immediate reaction. He said, well, Prabhupada, if you give me someone else. And Prabhupada said, oh, conditional.
And I was in 1977 in Mayapur, and one day I was massaging him. In the night, it was almost, because he was sick, he had fever. So we were taking turns, and constantly somebody was staying with him. So it was around 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was massaging him gently. So he woke up from his sleep. He had this almost 2 degrees fever. And he says, but these rascal scientists, they do not accept this. So you go and preach to them. Tell them that you are not the body, you are a spirit soul. And the proof of that is that in this life the soul is transmigrating from childhood to youth to old age. So he started speaking philosophy in the middle of night at 2:30 in the morning, in the middle of heavy fever. And then again went back to sleep after 10-15 minutes. So he was breathing, preaching. He was dreaming about preaching. He was living for preaching.
Prabhupada woke us up to how fragile this material world is and how deep-rooted we are in it, And he wanted us to get out of here. He wanted us to get out of here. Chant Hare Krishna. Wherever Prabhupada went, they would ask him, right? Well, how can we please you in the best way? Sometimes he'd say, learn Bhagavad Gita, right? But most of the time he would say, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. That's what he really wanted from us. You have to work like an ass to make a few bucks. Krishna will provide. Just chant Hare Krishna. Always remember Krishna. Everything for Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And that was his mercy on us. He gave us Krishna. He gave us the holy names. He gave us the movement of Lord Chaitanya. Wow. Wow. This personality. This divine grace. Jai Shri Prabhupada.